9 years have passed since the forest swallowed him whole, 9 winters of silence and snow, and the echo of a name carried only by wind and memory, and yet she howls every dawn, the same note raw and relentless, as if her voice alone could bend time, as if love could outlive reason or death or the cruel indifference of nature. Her coat faded, her body worn, but her eyes unchanged, locked on a place only she remembers, and far beyond the tree line where the world forgot him, a man rises with a scarred face and hollow eyes, hearing a sound that doesn't belong to this life, but to the one before the one he buried beneath hunger and frost and silence. Something in him moves, not thought, not logic, something older, something fierce and fragile and impossible, drawn by a pull that never faded, by a bond that never broke. Something is calling him back, and he does not know why, only that he must follow it. Each morning the forest stirred with slow breath, frost curling at the edges of fallen logs and silence, settling like dust. And in that stillness she moved, a ghost in white, threading through trees with steps worn into the earth. Her path always the same, circling the clearing, skirting the old cabin now sunken and broken with time. She never crossed its threshold, only paused by the door, her nose lifting as if scent alone could conjure him, her tail giving the faintest twitch, not wagging, not quite remembering. Then she'd lie beneath the same tree where they used to rest, her body curved into the earth, as if listening, and though her eyes closed, she never slept deeply. Each creak of wind, each crack of ice stirred her, and sometimes her head would lift suddenly, her ears prick, and for a breath her heart would race and then settle again into silence. When dusk came and shadows stretched like fingers over the snow, she would rise again, slow, deliberate. She would climb the ridge above the river's bend, and from that height she would howl long and low and aching, not wild, not warning, just reaching, as though some part of her still believed he might hear and answer. And when the last note faded into the dark, she would turn and disappear once more into the trees where no one watched, where no one remembered. But she did always. She did. It began like any other. Morning. The sky pale with breath. The river whispering through stone and frost. Elias had gone to fetch water with the easy steps of routine, with a hum under his breath, and Kaya had watched him disappear into the trees, his figure small, then gone, and something in the silence that followed felt too sharp, too still. Hours passed, then the sky darkened too fast. Winds rose like voices, screaming through the branches. The storm came hard and sudden, bending trees, tearing light from the sky. And when it passed, there was nothing, no footprints, no scent, no sound, only the roar of the river, swollen and merciless. Kaya searched the edge of the water for hours, nose to the ground, heart pounding a rhythm of denial. But the forest had already swallowed him when they came to look, the men with flashlights and quiet eyes. She followed them, ran ahead, whined, barked, circled the places where the ground felt wrong, but it led nowhere, just mud and silence and cold. And when they left, she stayed curled by the hearth, her ears trained to the door, unmoving for days, food untouched, eyes dry, howling each night, until her voice cracked, until even the wind seemed to flinch. The cabin darkened around her, the warmth faded, and she understood, without understanding, that the world had broken in a way she could not mend. She left not out of choice but necessity, the woods colder than ever, but the emptiness inside worse. She wandered not as a hunter, but as something hollow, driven by memory and habit and loss. Years passed, not, counted only, endured her coat, greyed her body, thinned, but still she howled still. She waited as if some piece of him might return, not as a boy, not even as a man, but as a sound, a scent, a ghost. Anything the forest grew around her, the seasons forgot her, but she remembered, always remembered, and in that memory, she lived half alive in a world that never answered back. Let me take a short pause in the story. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? Has there ever been a moment in your life when someone, a person or even an animal, remembered you after years apart? That kind of memory, that silent connection, can change everything. And if stories like this speak to something deep in you, don't forget to follow. There's much more heart to come. It had been years since he let himself look back. But one day, as he passed the edge of a nearby village, a child chasing a dog dropped a worn photograph into the dirt. It was old, bent by time, but he knew it before he even picked it up. It showed a boy, barely 10 arms wrapped around a white wolf, both of them looking into the lens with a kind of brightness he no longer remembered having. The world tilted in that moment. Something inside him lurched as if memory had teeth and had just sunk them deep. Into his chest he took the photo without a word, walked until the trees swallowed him and sat there, knees pulled to his chest, heart pounding. He hadn't spoken her name in years, hadn't dared let himself wonder if she'd survived, if she'd waited, if she could even remember him, or if that kind of bond simply vanishes with time. But then came the howl, not a memory, not a dream. An echo carried on spring air, distant, cracked and familiar. His breath caught. His first instinct was to dismiss it. His second was to run toward it. He didn't know where she was, didn't know if it was real, but something in him stood up, something old and trembling. But sure, the sound came again, and this time he answered. Not with a howl, not with a word, but with steps. The first in a line. He thought he'd never walk again through woods that both welcomed and warned, through fears that she had forgotten, or worse, that she had not, and would break all over again when she saw what time had done to him. But he went because something had reached out and pulled him back across the gap, across the silence, because maybe, just maybe not. Everything was lost because something still called, and he had nothing left to lose but his distance from it. He stepped from the trees slowly, each movement, uncertain as if the very air might break around him. And there in the clearing she stood, her body still, her eyes locked on his. Something shifted. The world seemed to pause. The wind stopped moving, and the only sound was the soft, uneven breath from both. Their chests, her ears flicked, her head tilted the way it used to when she was listening to things no one else could hear. His hand trembled at his side. He didn't speak, not yet, just stared as if afraid she might vanish if he did. Her coat was duller, her frame leaner, but her presence was unchanged. She was Kaya, and not just in form, but in some deep, unexplainable truth. Her nose lifted just slightly, catching his scent, and for a moment, nothing moved, not even time. Then she took one step forward, the snow, whispering beneath her paw, and he fell to his knees, not from weakness, but from the weight of it all. The weight of memory, of silence, of grief that never settled into peace. He whispered her name, not loud, not sure, just a breath. A question, Kaya. Her ears twitched again, and something behind her eyes cracked open. She stepped again and again, until she was close enough to touch, and she did not bark. She did not howl. She leaned her head slowly forward, pressed it into his chest, with the gentleness of a world returning to itself, and in that fragile quiet, he pressed his face to her neck, eyes closing against the rush of it, and everything inside him crumbled and was remade. The years fell away, and for the first time in forever, neither of them felt alone. The pup between them whimpered softly, but Kaya didn't move her body still against his heart. Her eyes closing, not in fear, but in knowing, and somewhere in the trees above them, a bird took flight, as if even the forest had held its breath, and now could, finally, exhale. The first morning after their reunion, the sun rose slow and golden, casting soft light over the clearing, and he awoke, not with fear, but with the weight of something warm pressed against his side. Kaya, her breathing calm, her body finally, at rest, and for a moment he didn't move, just lay there, eyes open, letting it settle, letting himself believe it was real, that she was real, and not a dream shaped by years of longing. The pup nestled between them, stretched, let out a tiny yawn, then bounded clumsily toward a stick half buried in the frost. Elias watched, and something flickered across his face. Not a full smile, not yet, but a soft lift of the mouth, a shape he hadn't worn in years. He reached out, slowly, ran his fingers through Kaya's, fur rough and thick and full of memory, and when she leaned into it, his throat tightened without words, without reason. Just the overwhelming ache of being seen again each day. After that was built on small things. He began speaking aloud again, first to Ash, then to Kaya, telling them about the sky, the trees, the dreams he used to have. She listened always, eyes on him, ears twitching at the sound of his voice. And sometimes when he paused, she would touch her nose to his hand, as if reminding him to keep going. They repaired the cabin together in their own way. He with his hands, she with her presence, watching, guarding, curling up in the doorway like she used to. And when he lit the fire for the first time in years, she didn't flinch. She lay beside it, as if no time had passed, and in that warmth he sat down beside her, ran his hand gently along her back, and whispered, "Thank you, not for finding him, not even for remembering, but for surviving, for waiting, for teaching him how to begin again." Ash would tumble through the grass, chasing leaves, nipping playfully at her tail, and she would let him then suddenly give chase, a burst of wild joy he hadn't seen in her since she was young, and he would laugh not loudly, but real. And in those moments, the forest no longer felt like exile, but home, no longer a wound, but a place of return. The silence between them now held peace, not distance, and in her eyes he no longer saw sorrow, but something deeper, older. The quiet power of love that never left, only waited. And perhaps that was the truth all along, that some bonds are not broken by time or distance, or even death. They are simply paused, waiting for the moment we are brave enough to believe again. And in that belief find ourselves whole. Once more. Some bonds ask for no words, they live in the space between silence and breath, in the look that lingers a moment too long, in the way two beings find each other again, after the world has forgotten how they once belonged. What was lost was never truly gone, only buried, beneath time and ache, waiting quietly for the one moment when memory becomes presence again. And in that moment something shifts, not loud, not sudden, but deep and forever. The man who had forgotten how to feel, and the wolf who had waited too long found, not what they had before, but something stronger made from absence and longing and survival. Some connections do not fade, they endure, they listen, they return exactly when we need them most, and they remind us that we were never truly alone. We were, simply waiting to come home.